Today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating. An official government rulebook for one of the most powerful technologies out there. Let's take a look at Taiwan's AI Playbook.
I mean, it's the big question on everyone's mind, right? Can a government actually run on something like ChatGPT? The idea of making everything super efficient is so tempting, but man, the risks if you get it wrong are just massive. So, where do you even begin?
Well, the government in Taiwan didn't just sit around asking the question, they've actually gone and drafted an answer. They've put out a whole new set of guidelines for every single public servant on how to use these tools safely and, effectively.
This whole conversation really just exploded back in late 2022 when generative AI hit the scene. All of a sudden, you had these tools that could create stuff that looked and sounded incredibly human. And as you can imagine, governments all over the world are now scrambling to figure out how to deal with it.
So what are we actually talking about with generative AI? Well, the government's own definition calls it a program that learns from just massive amounts of data to create new content. But here's the crucial thing to remember. What it spits out is only as good as the data it was trained on. It's the classic garbage in, garbage out problem, which can lead to anything from misinformation to just total nonsense.
And that puts the public sector in a really tricky spot. Because on one hand, AI is this incredible tool with so much promise, but on the other, it comes with some pretty serious risks that have to be managed, and managed very carefully.
This really lays out the high-wire act they're on. On one side, you've got the promise of streamlining all that bureaucracy, making public services faster. But on the other side, oh boy, the peril of leaking state secrets, spreading false information, or breaking privacy and copyright laws. The stakes just couldn't be any higher.
So, to walk that tightrope, the government created its official AI playbook. And let's be clear, this isn't just some friendly suggestion. It's a formal set of rules designed to create a single, clear approach for this completely new era.
The whole playbook is really built on these 4 core principles you see here. The goal isn't to shut AI down, not at all. It's to use it responsibly. Every single rule we're about to talk about flows from these big ideas. Making sure AI is trustworthy, keeping a human in the driver's seat, protecting privacy, and making sure someone is always accountable.
Now, the full document has 10 points, but let's be real, nobody's going to memorize all of those. The good news is it all boils down to 3 simple, easy-to-remember golden rules. This is the absolute heart of the playbook.
So yeah, the key thing here isn't memorizing a long list of regulations. It's about really getting these 3 foundational ideas. So let's break them down, one by one.
All right, first up, rule number 1, and this one is an absolute deal breaker.
Secrets must stay secret. It's that simple. Public servants are strictly, and I mean strictly, forbidden from feeding any confidential government info, personal data, or classified documents into these AI models. What goes into the government stays in the government. Period.
Okay, on to the second golden rule. And honestly, this one gets right to the core philosophy of this entire playbook.
The human is always in charge. The AI is just a tool. It's an assistant, not a replacement for human judgment. That means an employee always has to check the AI's work, and you can never, ever use its output as the only reason for an official decision. The final call has to come from a person.
And that brings us to the third and final golden rule, which kind of ties everything together.
Be open, honest, and legal. This one is kind of a 3-for-1 deal. First, you have to obey the law, especially around things like copyright and data protection. Second, if you're using AI to provide a service to the public, you have to say so, no hiding it. And third, everything has to be done with integrity, no cutting corners.
Okay, so we've got the rules, but who exactly has to follow them? The guidelines are actually very specific about who's on the hook. So, for the central government and all its agencies, these rules are mandatory, no exceptions, and that also applies to any private contractors working with them. Now, for public schools and state-owned companies, the rules are strongly recommended, and for other government bodies, they're meant to be used as a key reference point. The bottom line is, the core of the government has to follow these rules, and everyone else is pretty much expected to fall in line. So, what happens now? Is this playbook the final word on AI in government? Not even close. In fact, it's explicitly designed to be just the beginning.
The government is basically saying, hey, we know this technology is moving at lightning speed. So these guidelines are designed to be a living document. They're going to be constantly reviewed and updated as the tech itself changes. It's a strategy that's built to adapt.
And that leaves us with this final, really important question. As governments everywhere start to use these incredibly powerful tools,
not just as assistants, but as a real part of how they deliver services, how is that going to fundamentally change our relationship with the state? That's the big question this playbook is just starting to answer.